Welcome to Bounce, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of product teams, the challenges they face, and the incredible stories of resilience that emerge. I'm Molly Cox, your co-host, a product designer with a knack for navigating through the storms of creativity.
And I'm your co-host, Claire Flowers, a product manager who's seen it all. The highs, the lows, and everything in between.
Each week we'll bring you tales of product traumas, those moments that test our limits, they push our boundaries, and sometimes bring us to our knees.
We're talking about career flops and follies and those pivotal moments when everything seems to fall apart.
But as we know, the harder you fall, the higher you bounce. We'll explore with our guests their toughest challenges,
The actions they took to overcome them.
and how these experiences have shaped their careers and continue to impact them today.
So join us in this journey of resilience, growth, and bouncing back stronger than ever. Okay. Welcome to Bounce. My name is Claire Flowers. I am your co-host. I am joined by Molly Cox, our other co-host for Bounce. And today I am so excited to have with us Cori Fain-Forrest. Cori, welcome to the podcast. We're so pumped to talk to you today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I'm really excited to talk to Cori because she is the CEO and founder of Moxi, which is transforming the childcare landscape with innovation at heart. And what is so amazing about what Cori is doing is childcare is such a problem all over the United States, arguably the world. And Cori has created Moxi in order to solve this problem. And she's doing it in a very innovative way. Having some experience in childcare herself and a mother, she decided she was done with the problem and is setting out to fix it. So welcome, Cori. If you don't mind giving us a bit about your background, a little bit about Moxi, and we can get into it.
Yeah, well, thank you for that very kind intro. As Claire said, my name is Cori Fain-Forrest, and I am the founder of Moxi. I started my career as a childcare worker. I mean, I was one of those teenagers where my parents were like, you need to get a job before I could even drive a car. And so at about 15 years old, I started working at the local daycare center in my town. I did that for many, many years, and then eventually made my way to and through college and had lived many lives in my career, which we can talk about. But I worked internationally for different governments and nonprofits and eventually found my way into tech. And that is where I became pregnant with my son and re-encountered the childcare system, the childcare world as it exists today. And I was just floored by what I found. And so with the high prices, the long waiting list, the lack of flexibility, it blew my mind that I was at a startup working on innovating in this industry industry, but childcare, which touches so many people's lives and really has a huge defining factor. Like, it is a huge defining factor in your life about how you're going to live, work, take care of yourself, whatever it may be. That wasn't seeing as much innovation or investment. And so I dove right in, and that is how that's how I started Moxi. And there are more details in all of that, but that is true to me. I just sometimes find a problem and dive in head first and start working on it. And so that's how I found myself here.
Okay, so Cori, tell us what is Moxi?
Yes, so Moxi is a membership-based childcare center. We offer best-in-class care for children and modern amenities for parents. So what does that really mean? For us, you become a member of Moxi, and then you get access to our app, and you can go into that and book childcare on your schedule and what works for your life and your budget. So it can be every day of the year, or it can be just a couple days a month or a week. And once you are a member, you also get access to all of our amenities at our childcare centers. So we have co-working spaces, we have gyms on site, we have pumping rooms and community events as well. So I know when I became a new parent, I was really struggling to figure out, all kinds of things like, what is baby-led weaning and what do I feed my kid next? And also just trying to find parent friends. And so we facilitate a lot of that at Moxi with those events and the things we do to create community. And so Moxi is really like your modern hub for families and for today's parents.
Yeah, no, I want to go back just a little bit. So you touched on, so you didn't just come up with an idea. You're like, let's build this tech company. you'd been working in a tech company in economic development. Do I have that correct?
Yes, that was my career. So after college, I spent several years, like I said, working across the US and internationally in economic development. So my job was primarily building other communities. So coming in and helping to, bring a certain project that would increase income for women farmers. I did that in Rwanda for a while with the United Nations. I worked in Malaysia with their Ministry of Education. And so that I was doing economic and community development in other communities because I wanted to travel. I grew up here in Alabama. And growing up, I was always like, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get out of here. I want to see the world. And for someone like me, the way to see the world was to work around the world. And so I did that for the government, the U.S. government, international entities, nonprofits, and then eventually found my way back and was doing a little bit of economic development here in Birmingham when, my former boss, he started looking at my LinkedIn page and I was like, who is this guy? Who is this person? But a few phone calls later and I had a new job in the private sector, and it was the first time I had ever worked in the private sector, let alone a tech startup. And so it was really, I spent almost 3 years in a crash course of what it meant to look at a problem and build a solution for it in the private sector.
Interesting. Okay, so that brings us to this I guess kind of an inflection point when you've kind of worked in the public sector. Now you're marrying private and public and learning how to work between those two entities, and you come to this problem. So tell us a little bit about what was going through your mind when you have this amazing job doing great work in a community that you live. What did it take for you to kind of leave that behind and start this new venture?
Becoming a mother, honestly. I loved my job. I worked really hard. I mean, I love work. It's a huge defining factor of who I am. And because of how I was raised, because I was a first generation student, because of all the, I guess, the mantras and the well wishes may not even be the right word, but all the ways my mom spoke over me as a kid. And she was like, you will go to college. You're going to do great things. You're smart. You can live and work wherever you want. Like that's just been a huge part of who I am. And so when I was working at, my previous employer at the startup, I loved it. I loved getting to lean into a problem and move quickly and solve for like little fires every day and big fires, like the whole problem, the whole shebang we were trying to figure out. But I love being able to do that with a lot of ownership and speed and creativity. Um, but at the same time, I wanted a family. My husband and I had been talking about it for some time. And so we were really thrilled when I found out I was pregnant with our son. And that was just such a happy, exciting moment. And I knew my life would change when I became a parent. I really did. Like I understood that on some level, but I didn't realize how radically it would change and what a glorious inconvenience it is to be somebody else's everything. And so I don't think anyone could have told me how my life was going to change. Like, I really think I had to learn that. And once I became a mother, it, that was it. Like that was the catalyst where the moment and the transformation in my life where I was like, if I'm going to spend time away from this child and I have the choice, I have the opportunity to do something different, it better be damn well worth it. Like, and if I'm going to take a big risk, like now is the time to do that because he is little, he is malleable. Like if I crash and burn everything we have, like we've got time until he, maybe wants to go to college or any whatever else he wants to do. Like, and just in my head as a new mom, it was really this catalytic moment where I was like, this life is mine and who I am and how I get to live it. Like, this is the moment. I want to take this risk and I want to be like the happiest, most fulfilled version of myself. And by the way, I can't keep working 80 hours a week for someone else. I need a lot of flexibility. So while I still work that many hours, I get to do them like early before he gets up and during my son's nap time and late at night or Saturday, however I want to work it out. But I just knew that was the moment that I wanted more control over my life, and I wanted to be someone I was really proud of and my son was really proud of.
I love that. So you're at a startup, and you probably didn't realize going to that startup that very soon you would be creating your own startup. You said it was like a boot camp and a
No.
crash course, and then here we go, and now it's on you.
Yeah.
And I have kids myself, and you're absolutely right. The way it changes you, you just can't foresee that. And it changes you in so many different ways. But I really want to talk about, so you had your child and you encountered this problem. And this problem was really the catalyst of where you are today. So can you share more about those
Yeah.
personal challenges that you faced as that new mother, really trying to find the childcare, and how that led to your idea of solving this problem?
Yeah, I think one important thing to note here is while I'm sitting more on the other side of this issue that I faced, and I can look at it in with a healthier mind. I'm further out. I'm not postpartum anymore. Like
Right.
I can see this more holistically and more positively. I should just say, like, there's a lot of anger baked into my pregnancy and my early days, weeks, months of motherhood. And so that's a huge part of this story too. But really, to your point, I was excited. Like I said, I was really excited to be pregnant with my son, like thrilled to be growing my family. And I had worked in childcare, and I remembered that it was smart to call before you had your kid to get on the wait list so that, by the time you had your kid, if and when you went back to work, you had a spot. So I'm 3 months pregnant, and I am the type of person who really likes to plan. Like, I have to-do lists that my husband and I share, like, on our phones, and I have paper lists and Asana and all these, live and die by my calendar, all that. And I was like, I'm 3 months pregnant. I am going to call daycares right now. Like, my husband and I, we're going to pick out the best daycares in the city, like the locations we want, the prices we want. We're going to talk to the teachers and learn about their credentials and about the curriculum. And we are going to find these daycares, and we are going to get on their wait list, and we're just going to get this done. We're going to mark it off our list and get a spot for our son, before we even really need to.
Were you like impressed with yourself? You're like, I'm ahead of the
Oh
game.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm only
Again,
3 months pregnant.
This is one of those moments where I look back and I just laugh at myself because I'm like, I still thought I had control over
Yeah.
my life and
little
motherhood.
did you know.
And now I'm like, there's no control in this. Like, but yeah, so I vividly remember that day. My husband and I split up the list. He called 5, I called 5 childcare centers in town that we liked. And it was like, call one. Oh, no, our wait list, we have 280 families ahead of you. And it's probably going to be 2 to 3 years. So, honey, I wouldn't even pay the $100 wait list fee. You're never going to get a spot. I'm so sorry. And I was like, wow, that was a weird phone call. Like, that must really be the daycare everybody wants to go to. That must be like the childcare center. And then phone call 2 went the same way, and 3 and 4 and 5. And I'm texting my husband, and he's saying the exact same thing. He's at work making these phone calls. And suddenly I am just filled with dread because I realize, like, we don't have a childcare spot.
What
Like,
am I
I'm
gonna
3
do?
months pregnant,
Yeah.
and I'm like, we're not going to have a childcare spot when this baby is born, let alone most centers were telling me it was going to be 2 to 3 years before we got a spot. And that has held very true. My son will be 2 at the end of January, and those 10 original centers, none of them have ever called us back with a spot.
That
Never
is
even called us back.
Insanity.
Yeah. Yeah. So all that to be said, like, that was the day where just the dark cloud came over me, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, there's got to be childcare in this city. There's got to be childcare somewhere. Like, I work, my husband works, and I want to keep working. And it just dawned on me that this was all about to change, that, a wait list was going to be a huge factor in how my life changed, although I didn't really know how just yet. So I was panicked. We started calling childcare centers that were 20, 30, 45 minutes away, one direction, like in whole other cities and towns. And it was a huge problem. And I started blaming myself, frankly. I was like, I've done something wrong. I've missed the memo here. Like, clearly I don't like, I don't know. I just don't understand how to do this because this can't be what every parent is experiencing. How would anyone plan for their life or work or take care of themselves? And I started doing research and some of that was like online Googling and reading articles about childcare. I was typing in like can't find childcare spot, really long childcare wait list, childcare crisis was a term I really frankly learned and started Googling. And I was reading all these articles, but I also started talking to other parents. And frankly, it was, I would say like, oh, does anyone want to talk to me about this? Are you experiencing this issue? And it was always moms who came forward and were like, yes, like this is, let me tell you how to do this. Okay, so you call every childcare center on your wait list every day, or you set a calendar reminder, you call them every Thursday, and you're just really in front of them, or try to join that church, try to go make a donation. And I was like, hold on, like there's a gaming system here. Like there's like a black market of information about how to get a childcare spot.
It's like getting season tickets at like one of the big like football teams. You got to make
Yes.
donations to the
Yes.
booster club. Yeah, totally.
And so that is when I realized that this small problem I experienced as a childcare worker. So years and years before, when I saw parents joining wait lists and having to wait for some time after their kid was born, maybe they called later in their pregnancy or right when their child was born, had only gotten worse in the years I had spent away from the industry. And so this moment in my life when I was 3 months pregnant with my son is when I kind of came full circle and came back in touch with childcare and realized what a just disastrous problem this was for American families, just for families in my town, for families across my state of Alabama, but also just everywhere. Like this problem is not isolated to Birmingham or Alabama or the Southeast. It is a problem that every single person I talk to, whether they live in Rhode Island or Colorado or New York, they're like, yes, like we cannot find enough childcare. We cannot find the right kind of childcare that's flexible for us. And also, by the way, like we're driving, an hour round trip to get to the spot that is open for our kid. So that is when it just hit me. I was like, this is a huge problem and it's eating me up. It started eating me up. And I'm not sure the day when the idea for Moxi came to me, but it was like this problem was top of mind for me. I was just thinking about it constantly. I was like, it's not me, like it's the whole system. But I was coming to work every day at this startup where we were making living as flexible as possible and like where we were just pouring time and resources and smart people's attention and energy into this problem. And I was seeing all these cool things happening in the industry. And I was like, why are we not doing that in childcare? Like, why are we not pouring that type of energy and innovation into childcare for the betterment of all of us, frankly, like for families and mothers and employers, everyone. And so that one day the idea just kind of came to me. I was like, why don't I make childcare as flexible as possible? And that stuck with me through my pregnancy until I became bold enough to walk into my boss's office and say, hey, I think I'm done here. I was like, I know I'm 8 months pregnant, but I've got this great idea. What do you think about it?
It's a little bit of boldness and hormonal rage, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, like there's like these currents of extreme appreciation for being pregnant and having a child and becoming a parent, and just the anger I felt every day at the way my life was changing, the way people were perceiving me as a pregnant person. Like I was just like, I'm still me, but people are acting so weird around me, and my life is being decided by things like wait lists. And it just, for someone who has likes to have a lot of control over things, like I had zero control over any of this.
I'm curious to your earlier question. You asked yourself, why aren't we focusing our attention? This is a massive problem, do you have any opinions on why it hasn't been focused on yet?
Yes. So there are some fantastic innovators, entrepreneurs, nonprofits that have leaned into the childcare space. There is energy and creativity and innovation that is happening here. In my lane of this world, which is so Moxi, really at our core, we are trying to build the absolute highest quality, best childcare available that is 100% flexible to fit your life. So the way Moxi works is once you become a member, and we limit membership. So we, in essence, like reserve your spot. But once you become a member, you get access to all of our locations through our app. And you can go into that app and you can book childcare every single day of every week of the year, or you can book it every Thursday. If maybe you're a stay-at-home parent or your nanny is never available on Thursdays, like you can book it like that as well. You can book it, when you have a last minute doctor's appointment or only on, the fall break when your daycare is closed. Whatever it may be, we are there. We are there for you when you need us in whatever way you need us, and you get to design the childcare schedule that fits your life and customize the budget that you're spending on childcare as well. And so that's really powerful for families. It's not something that exists. And so for my lane, which is like flexible, high quality childcare that is located in a physical location, not a babysitter, not a nanny, that works for some families. It's not great for others if you don't want to give up access to your home or your car, or, babysitters are typically really young and available on nights and weekends. If you want your kid to be in a social setting at a center where they see the same teachers, whether they're coming a few days a year or every day of the week, and you want them to socialize with other kids and get out of the house and do, for us, we have Montessori play-based curriculum. And so if you want them to be stimulated and practice their social emotional learning, things like that, that's the type of care we provide. And so we are available when you need us in the way you need us. And in that lane of flexible childcare, no one was working there. So to your question, yeah, I mean, generally, there's a lot of reasons why investment in childcare has not followed like the demand or the need of families over the past several decades. One of the things I can say is like dual income households have been on the rise for quite some time. And you also have, over the past couple of years, like the rise in wages and inflation means that childcare workers, like they are experiencing increasing prices all across their lives while still often making minimum wage. Or that's like $7, $8, $9 in most states. And so you have someone who is making minimum wage, typically doesn't have benefits. Most childcare workers are not offered any kind of benefits, and the prices in their lives are increasing. So guess what they're doing? They're leaving the childcare industry and going to work at Chick-fil-A, Walmart, Home Depot, because they can make more per hour, they can get paid more, and they can get the benefits that they need to take care of their own families. So you have this rise in dual income households, which means there's an increase in demand for childcare. And at the same time, you see this mass exodus of childcare workers to other industries because they themselves are making really hard decisions about how they'll better take care of their own families. And so right now, a recent survey, a national survey, estimated that 8 out of 10 childcare workers were looking for other jobs, higher paying jobs. And so you have these staffing shortages where you have entire childcare centers where they're like, yeah, we have 3 empty rooms. We have a wait list with 300 families on it, and we have 3 empty rooms we could open, but we just can't find any staff to work those rooms. Like we can barely hold on to the staff that we have. And so it's this really big staffing problem, and it's happening in an industry where there were already razor thin margins. I mean, it's hard to open a childcare center, right? There's a lot of
Liability.
there's liability. If you want a license from the state, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. You've got all these like inspections, and you just, there's so much to be done here. And you're trying to charge families as little as possible because most of the time, if families can't access childcare, they can't go to work, and it has this huge impact on their life. So all that to be said, this was already an industry that wasn't highly profitable. So if it is not a highly profitable industry, like why pour time and energy into new businesses in this industry, or like trying to figure out how to innovate in this industry? So it takes some folks who want to marry like social and financial returns to lean into this, and those people do exist, and they're here, right? They're working and innovating, but overall it's just really, it's this big issue of staffing shortages and rise in dual income households, and then just a lack of public investment. Like there's really minimal federal investment in childcare. States have started trying to follow suit in the past few years, or not follow suit, but to add investment over the past few years as they've seen like childcare centers are closing in mass, and now states are like, oh, like people actually cannot work if they cannot access childcare, and we need people to work. And so states have started to lean in some, but it's sporadic. It's patchwork solutions. It's not a like holistic blanket solution for childcare as a whole.
And I've seen people trying, one of the past organizations I was at, I'm in Nebraska, and they're a pretty large employer here in Nebraska. They opened their own childcare center but they partnered with an extremely expensive childcare center. So it was not equitable. Like it's still very, very difficult because the prices were so high. It filled up immediately. So even people there still couldn't even get care. But Cori, what I love about your story is you're a problem solver, right? You saw this problem and you went out and tried to solve it. I had the same problem when my oldest was born. I was they said 18, 24 months. And it's like 2 years ago, I wasn't even thinking about having a kid. Why would I be on a wait list at this point? Right. Here's how I solved the problem, Cori. I went and got a job for the church so you made a whole company. I became employed. So, but I did. They were opening this design position, and it was like, oh, sweet. It was like a real part-time gig. And I became an employee. It allowed me to jump the wait list. So that's how I gamed the system. And here Cori creates an entire company to solve the childcare crisis. So
that's intense, Cori.
It puts me to shame.
I don't know that we're going to solve the whole childcare crisis. I think we're going to, it's a really big problem. There is room for a lot of solutions, a lot of actors. Sure. But what I will say is when all this was happening, it just, the nuance here is I actually had family members who were willing to watch my kid, but they couldn't do it 5 days a week. So I had 2 or 3 days covered. And that's how I was like pulling my childcare schedule together every week with what felt like, Scotch tape and bubble gum. And I was just like barely holding it together. Yeah. And I was just like, why can't I just need 2 days of childcare? And my husband and I were signing up for full-time care, willing to shell out that cash and pay for full-time care, knowing that we really only needed a few days. And that is where I was like, there's so little option for families here. I mean, let alone the wild notions I had, which was like, I'm going to make this long list of childcare centers and pick my very favorite. And like, they're going to be vying for my child and my business. And I was like, no, I am begging anyone at this point to like, let us in. When I realized the scale of the problem, but yeah, there's so little option. And what you said about really the employer who's partnered with a really expensive childcare center, I don't know the center you're talking about. I don't know their prices. But I think one of the big things that we are leaning into in the new year will be starting to think through how can we be really transparent in our pricing? Because in talking to parents, in doing research for Moxi to validate this problem, that's something I got all the time. They're like, how is it that I'm paying X dollars and the teacher who's watching my kid is making,
$8, right?
$7, $7.35 an hour or $9 an hour. How is it that like her car broke down and she just can't get it fixed and now she can't come to work? So it's just this disconnect of like, I'm paying what feels like a painful amount of money, and these teachers who are taking care of like what is most important to me in this world are barely getting paid. They're barely able to take care of themselves. Like what's happening in between? And I think for me too, when I started this, I was like, oh, we're going to bring those prices down. And then when I really dug in and was like building out the budget and leasing buildings and hiring staff and doing all this stuff, I was like, oh, that's where the money goes. And so a big part of what we want to do in the new year is be really transparent about pricing, because I think the first step to helping folks understand, this is an investment in your career, yourself, your child, which people know, but then to also say, hey, employers, politicians, look, this is how the maths. Like this is where the money is going. And here's very real ways to lean in and support childcare centers that aren't just give cash to childcare centers or give cash to parents. Like it could also be that maybe there are tax exemptions on properties or, employee taxes for childcare centers. Like there's some very real ways that when you get into the mess of budgeting and building a childcare center, you could shave you could find savings. And so a huge part of what we're going to do is lean into that transparency. And it's scary, right? Like it's very scary. We're not exempt from what a lot of people will consider high prices. Like one of the ways that we overcome the staffing shortage and one of the ways we provide the high quality care we do is to invest in our staff. And so we pay them more than average. We give them robust benefits. And still one of our biggest priorities is keeping prices down for families. But I mean, good childcare is expensive to do.
Expensive.
And someone has to pay for it. So if it's not the government or your employer, then it's families.
Yep. And those costs, I mean, there's so many, like, how do you think they're eating food all day, right? They have breakfast, they have lunch, they have the building, all these things. It's really, really difficult. But so I want to kind of go back to when you stepped away, you left your startup and kind of came here. And I think one of the hardest things about becoming a founder, starting a startup, is transitioning from your idea to a really solid business model. You've had to go through everything from building tech, fundraising. You've been the CFO, the CEO, the CTO, like you've been all of these things, right? What's been the most difficult part of this process for you since launching Moxi?
Ooh, the most painful part of building this company to date has probably two things are tied. One was finding the money to start this company. I don't sit on a pile of personal wealth. I wish I did. Would have made this whole process a lot easier. But that's just not the case. And so I knew I needed to find others to help me support this vision, this dream for what childcare could be. So fundraising, finding that money was really difficult. And then the second part was convincing a landlord to give us a property, to give us a building. I would have never thought that the brick and mortar side of this business would be like the hardest thing to hold on to, but that has been true through fundraising and through actually acquiring a space. There's a lot of things that were hard about fundraising, but related to brick and mortar, when I started this, I just met so many people who were like, I only want to invest in apps or SaaS. Like I have no interest in brick and mortar. It's too scary, too risky, blah, 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 all these things. So a few of them were even like, would you consider dropping the brick and mortar piece and just doing the app or the technology piece of Moxi?
But that's half your business idea. That's half your business idea, right?
We're like, people are doing that already.
Yeah.
Right. Which is always my point. I was like, look, if you want to invest in a nanny or a babysitter app or whatever that may be, like those exist, they're out there, and I'll happily point you to them. But the reason that Moxi is so powerful is because we have this vertical integration. We control these brick and mortar spaces so that we are always there, always available. And it is consistent care no matter what day of the year or what time of the day you find us. You're not like getting on an app and finding listing a job and like you've got one babysitter on Thursday and another babysitter on Friday. My friend, one of our advisors, went through 18 babysitters 2 weeks ago trying to find someone to cover her for a work thing she had on a Saturday. And it was just wild.
And the amount of time,
oh my gosh, if Moxi,
yeah,
that's exactly right. Oh yeah. She is the head of her organization. She is a single parent, and she's like, this is time I could be spending with my kid or making money. Like she's like, those are the two things I do with my time. And so she was like, if Moxi was open, because we're open on Saturdays, by the way, she was like, I could have just booked a spot and moved on with my life. She was like, I'm going to pay the same amount of money to a babysitter. I might as well have just saved myself like 3 days of work and booked a spot with Moxi. So all that to be said, the brick and mortar piece, it's so important for us. It is the power. It guarantees that there is availability for folks in our network, but no one wanted to fund that, invest in that. And then when it actually came time to find the building, landlords, 8 out of 10 landlords wouldn't even talk to us when they found out we were childcare.
Why?
8 out of 10 oh my gosh. It took me about 5 minutes to realize what an inconvenience children are to so much of our society.
Yeah.
Children are loud. Playground equipment is ugly. Swings are not what we want in view of customers. Diapers smell. How are you going to keep the smell from getting into other tenants' offices, and to which I'm like, do you know what the neighbor is microwaving for lunch? Like, you're not gonna.
It's called
Also,
a
like,
diaper
it doesn't
genie.
just smell like diapers.
leftover
Yeah,
I'm gonna use a diaper genie.
What's worse, the
I was like-
leftover shrimp from yesterday or a dirty diaper?
every family that has a child is like, let me get this modern technology. It's called diaper genie. Let me get this contraption to contain the smell. But yeah, just the list went on and on. Like 8 out of 10 landlords wouldn't even entertain a conversation with us when they found out we were childcare. And then of the landlords that would talk to us, they were like, we would be open to that concept for this building. And I would get in there with my like architect and my contractor, and the space would just be either absolute garbage. It would need $1 million of renovation just to make it like a white box, like a basic plain space, let alone to then build in all the things you need for a childcare center. Or it was so impossible to make it a childcare center, because you need to get a license in the state of Alabama. You need outdoor space, and you have to have a certain number of square feet per kid. You need either a private parking lot or a drop-off lane. You can't use on-street parking. So like that really is an issue when you start looking at more urban settings. So again, in downtown Birmingham, finding a brick and mortar space where a landlord was open to our concept, it didn't require millions of dollars of renovation, and it had space to build or put in a playground and parking or drop off, was like finding a needle in a haystack.
Wow.
So that is, yeah.
And then, I mean, the building on top of that, I mean, I feel like we haven't even talked about the other side of what Moxi is, with kind of some of your amenities and the amazingness that you offer to the parents who are taking their kids to the childcare center. So tell us a little bit about kind of all the things that it encompasses.
Yeah. So childcare is the largest part of what we do, but in order, as I mentioned before, we're a membership-based childcare center. So you pay a monthly or an annual fee and you become a member. When you're a member, you have the ability to book childcare on your schedule for the time and the budget that works for you. However, in order to make that membership really valuable, we also offer amenities at our childcare centers that are available to you every day of the year, whether your child is in care with us or not. So our childcare centers have co-working spaces that, are exactly what you'd imagine, with like open tables for work and call booths and conference rooms. They also have pumping and feeding spaces. So if your child is on site and you want us to bring them up to you to feed them, bottle feed, breastfeed, whatever it may be, like that's possible with us. Or if you're pumping while your child is elsewhere, that we make space for that too. And then we also have a fitness studio on site as well, so a gym. So for your monthly membership fee, you get full-time access to co-working and fitness, and the ability to book childcare on your schedule. And if your child is there, they're on site with you. And there's a lot of amazing benefits for that. I mean, you're not spending all your time in the morning driving to daycare, dropping them off at daycare, getting back in your car, driving to the gym, doing a quick run, showering, driving back to your office. But you're eliminating a lot of that travel labor, I guess you could call it, from your schedule. You're saving yourself a lot of time and even money there. But you also get these awesome benefits of like never missing another Valentine's Day party, or being on site if you just want to have lunch with your kid, or I know my son has days where he's just extra clingy, and it would be awesome to have him on site and be able to just go, like, after every meeting, I'm going to walk down and give him a big hug, and maybe we're going to have lunch together today. And that's possible at Moxi, because we really believe in trying to help families have a better family work self-life balance. Like, there's that, I think for most moms, you're either taking care of your family, you're taking care of like your career, your aspirations, and then you're taking care of yourself. And oftentimes that comes last, which is a whole other conversation. But we're trying to make space for you to be able to do that in one location. And so that's a huge benefit of our membership for the families that we serve.
And I love that co-working. So
Yeah.
it's like my
I keep
co-working
hearing
space meets
consolidation.
childcare. Yes.
Consolidation of bills. You can just cancel that gym membership if you're, cancel that co-working space.
Yeah, it's not just
That's
my
exactly
travel
right.
time. It's like I'm putting all my budgets into one thing. But I mean, Cori, like building a startup, that's hard, right? It's so hard. And you were a new mom and like you walked in and you quit and then here you were with this in front
Well,
of
to
you,
be
right?
fair,
She gave notice.
I should give my previous boss, yes, I should give him a lot of credit too. Like, to be really fair, and
Yeah.
I guess now I can tell the story, but yeah, like I like kind of half quit when I was like around 8 months pregnant. He was like, hold on. He was like, this is a great idea.
Let's think
I was like,
about
but
it.
take your maternity leave. He was like,
Right.
let me pay you for 12 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
take your maternity leave. Think about it.
Wow.
I mean, he very much like, he's so supportive of people who want to go off and do their own things, but he was like, if you are still all consumed by this idea when you come back, he's like, let's talk and we'll figure it out. So
That's pretty
walked in
amazing.
first day back from maternity leave, and I was like, hey,
thought
I'm gonna be
about
gone on Friday. I was like, quit. So,
You're like, not only was I mad then, but I'm really mad now.
like,
yeah.
I've
But
been
you
home
know,
for 3 months.
yeah, his response was not like, oh man. He was like,
Yeah.
hell yes, like let's do this. He was like, get out of here, like get out of here. So he was very supportive of that, and I really appreciate that. And you know, so just to give him his credit.
No, that's awesome.
I did give notice. I actually gave a lot of notice. I tried to quit multiple times.
Quit.
Yeah.
You gave basically a 4-month notice at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I mean, so many sacrifices have to go along with, you know, building your startup, especially when you're raising a brand new family. So what was some of those most significant lifestyle changes that you had to make during this journey? That couldn't have been easy.
Yeah. I mean, just being really honest, and maybe up until now, people are listening and thinking, wow, this all sounds so rosy and fantastic, but it has been hard. And I'm really lucky. My husband also works in a startup. So when I came to this, when I had this idea and brought it to him, I mean, one, he is just so supportive of me and believes in the things I want to do, but he also understood what a startup meant. Like, that was not a shock to him. So when we decided to do this, though, I mean, we knew it would be painful, and it really was. We sold our house. We moved into a very small apartment. I mean, it's a 1-bedroom apartment. My son's bedroom is our master closet, which we outfitted for him. We, I mean, we had to basically figure out how to become a 1-income family. We sold our cars and drive like paid off clunkers. I mean, we really like, we looked at everything in our lives and we were like, we don't care about cars, and we can sell this house. We'll buy another house one day. Like, you know, we'll live in this apartment. And part of that was financial savings. Part of it was convenience. Like, we don't have time to take care of a yard. We don't have time to be worrying about the ceiling that's, you know, or the toilet that's leaking into the basement. Like, we can't do any of that. We need to streamline our life. And so one way in which we did that was just looking at everything we owned and saying, this takes up a lot of our money, or this takes up a lot of our time, get rid of it. Because frankly, what we really do is build our companies and spend time together. And that, like, I'm so lucky that we get to do that, but we were really intentional about this and had to do some painful things that people might not want to do. I mean, I loved our house. We'd spent a couple years renovating it. It was this beautiful historic home, and we got rid of it like 2 weeks after the idea came to us. I mean, we just knew what was going to have to happen in order to build this company. And so, yeah, I mean, we have funded Moxi, especially in the beginning, and our lives just look very different. I mean, we do all the things you would think. We eat the Dollar Trader Joe's burritos, and you know, don't buy new clothes, and yeah, I mean, like, but that's okay, right? Like, for me, those things didn't matter as much as being able to build this company and lean into this dream that I have. And hopefully, if this works, to make a difference for countless families.
Yeah.
And then to be able to show my son what it really looks like for his mom to just be full out, like, standing in my purpose and completely satisfied with my choices. So that was what was important to us. And we did a lot of changing. That was really, we've missed friend trips, weddings. Like, it is painful. So if you're thinking about starting a company, like, that is the part that maybe not every podcast would even ask about or everyone gets to, but it is not all rosy. Like, we sit down every month and we're like, here's diapers, here's Moxi, here's like rent, and that's it. Like that. I mean, that's where we are, but we're really happy with our choices right now.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for your transparency, because I think so many people have this magical idea that becoming a founder, I'm going to magically get buckets of money. I'm going to create this tech and I'm going to make gobs and gobs of money. I'm going to have more than I know what to do with. But little do they know, so often the founders, the ones with the idea, are the ones who make the least amount of anyone, because you're pouring that right back into the business and you're sacrificing things in your life. Claire, I cut you off. What were...
No, I was going to say the same thing. I appreciate you sharing that with us, because so often, and like the detail of it too, you're like, we sold our house. We live in a 1-bedroom. We converted a closet for my son. Like, I just think that that's such good, information for people to understand. Like, it's not all rosy, like you said. We've got to make some, but also I think it's amazing that, first of all, your husband sounds great.
Shout out to him. Yeah.
I'll be so happy that
There's been a couple of times you've mentioned him. I'm like, this guy sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, he likes to call himself the shadow co-founder, and I'm like, hold your horses there.
Easy.
Yeah.
But, and also it's just how important it is to keep things in perspective. You've decided to make these sacrifices. I imagine you probably have somewhat of a runway or a time frame for how long you're going to be making these sacrifices before you decide, okay, it's not worth it or whatever. But y'all are still able to maintain the perspective of like, hey, this is why we're doing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, your why is very clearly defined and you're very committed to it. And I think keeping that just at the root of everything is really what makes it carries you on.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you put it that way as far as runway, because that's exactly right. Like, people often talk about runways for startups and companies. We also have a family runway. So sorry. My AirPod just fell out. So I'm glad you put it that way, because yes, we often talk about runways as something that startups or companies have, but my husband and I talk about it as our family runway. So we make the choices we make now because we're trying to extend our family runway as long as possible to make sure we can take care of our son and each other and all the basics and necessities of life, as long as it takes for me to get Moxi to the point where I can pay myself, and I can pay myself enough to make a difference in our lives. And then, eventually, hopefully see a return for the company that is beyond, that is a reward for what we're doing now. But I mean, all of that, this being a brick and mortar and technology company, I mean, this is a long-term commitment. We're not going to put 100 Moxis across the US in 2 years. That's not going to happen. But in 5, 6, 10 years, yeah, that's realistic. And so we understand we're in it for the long haul.
You hear that, landlords? They're coming after you. Just kidding. Everybody listen up. Just to kind of go on the product side of everything, we've talked a lot about the brick and mortar, but we have the tech side as well. I mean, you've been building the app. There's obviously got to be the vessel and the tool for everybody to, do the scheduling and get their time in there. How are you kind of at this point balancing user needs with the technical and financial feasibility of some of the features and services that you have? Have there been trade-offs that you've had to make there?
Oh, 100%. I mean, if that's not clear by now, and I'm sure y'all know this, but that's all a startup is trade-offs.
Yeah.
I know people are like, have you ever thought about this? And I'm like, yes, 1,000 times.
Never.
I can neither afford it nor have the buy-in yet to build that.
Right.
So trade-offs have happened all the time, but I'm really fortunate because I made a lot of relationships with engineers and product people, designers, just cool folks when I worked at my previous company. And so that has followed me. I've been able to call them up and say, hey, I need to build an app. And they're like, well, why do you want to build an app and not the website? Why not the web platform? I'm like, I don't know. Let's talk about that.
Great question.
That's just what I thought of first.
What a great product question to ask. Well, why that and not this? Oh.
Yeah. Which truly at first I was like, oh, what? And then, there was back of brain reasoning for why I did it. But when someone asked it, a product person asked me that, and I was like, I don't know. Let me think about how I can articulate that. But the reality was convenience. Like, parents are often really busy. And when you think about on-demand care, a lot of times we will be used as backup care or with minimal notice or last minute decision making. And so you don't want to have to like find your laptop and pull that out, or, fiddle with like an internet browser on your phone. Like, just click the app, 2 clicks, you've booked care, you're good to go. So there was a decision behind that. So part of it has been like following my intuition as a parent too. Like, there are some decisions I make because you have to make 1,000 a day in building a startup, that it takes me a second, if someone asks why I did that, to think about how to articulate it. And then again, I have just great product and engineering people from my previous job in my network, in my universe. And so being able to call them and talk through stuff, so much so that some of them are now like, hey, so let me just look, I think it's time for you to just bring me on and let me do this like with you, for you, in a more regular basis. And I'm like, great, advisor. But so I've had really great folks who have leaned in and given me a lot of their expertise. I've also had folks who do all the building of engineering and product, who have given me like the family and friend discount, who have connected me with other talented individuals. So we've gotten a really long way with our product, with our actual like technology build, because of people who believe in what we're building and have been so gracious with their time, talent, everything they have, and just have given to Moxi. That doesn't mean they don't charge us, but there's a difference in going to like a firm to build an app, like an engineering firm, and having a friend who's like, no, I got 3 engineers, I'm gonna call them, we'll do this for you in a month, like, and it'll be X dollars. They just want to build it because they think it's fun. I'm like, great, that sounds fantastic. So that's been a huge part of it. And then all of that is rooted either in, like I said, like some of it's intuition, and some of it is actually in what parents are requesting. So like the research we've done, and research sounds so big and lofty. And when I listen to podcasts, sometimes people are like talking about all the market research and customer research they did. And I think as companies grow, that does become more sophisticated. But let me be really clear. When I say market research, I'm talking about, I email 10 people and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to figure out this question, and I know you want to use Moxi, or you bought a membership to Moxi. Would you be open to talking to me about it? And sometimes it's a call, a coffee, text messages, and then they're like, hey, you should talk to this person. And it just keeps ballooning until you're like, all right, I've talked to 100 parents about this, and here's what 80% of them say would actually be useful in their lives. That's what we're going to build. That's what we're going to focus on first. And the other 20% will come, but we don't have the time or the resources to do that right now. And let's just make sure that when we build this thing, let's test it before we just throw more features in there and then realize like the whole foundation is just crummy. It's not what we needed to begin with. So
I think
it's a lot of things mixed
I think
in.
you would be shocked in that process that you just described, how like career product people, that's exactly what they
That's
do.
what we do too.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Maybe some people call it market research, but we do exactly what you just described.
Well, and there is a point though also that you were just saying without saying it, is you get diminishing returns. You do so many and they start saying the same thing. I'm going to get diminishing returns the more people I interview. But I want to plug this real quick, and I'll put have either of you, I read this, well, I didn't read it. I'm an Audible listener. Does that count as reading?
Yes.
This is a big debate. Great. Okay. So coming home from Thanksgiving, I listened to an Audible book called The Mom Test. Now, it's not necessarily about mothers, but it is essentially how to talk to users and how to talk to customers and how to interview correctly to really get the features you're looking for without leading and biasing them. Phenomenal book. It's a 3-hour listen. So I can't recommend that more. You guys should both check out The Mom Test.
I will.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting.
It's basically the reason they call it The Mom Test is it's basically what we love to do is tell people our ideas. Especially, so we go to our mom, who's going to be the most biased person on the planet. It's mothers or fathers. And so how do we talk to people without creating the bias is basically the gist of the book. So
I'm just laughing so hard because I told my mom something the other day and she was like, she basically disagreed with me. And I was like, well, that's how we do it at Moxi. She's like, oh, well, that's a great idea too.
See?
Anything I say to you, you're going to think is a good idea.
You literally just got the mommed,
someone
right?
Someone else has to say it. It can't come from you. Yeah. I've used that on my mom too. I'm like, oh, well, your friend so-and-so liked this song. And she's like, oh,
But here's something else cool. Something else I learned cool in that book is like the compliment. Actually never take compliments, because that's a way to shut you down. So if somebody says, oh, that sounds really cool, let's like, hey, when you get closer to launch, so let's circle around about it. And it's like, okay, well, they just gave me, they said it was cool. They just gave
A
me
nice no.
It's a nice no, right? So let's go back into the interview. And so it's a really cool book, a lot of learning in 3 hours. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Just another example came to mind about the product piece of this, which I guess I mean, the colors are part of product. I guess it is. Design, product, engineering, for me, it's all so mashed up into one like beautiful tornado process that then spits out this thing that we hope will be really impactful in people's lives. And I'm sure all of the professionals listening to this will be like, that's not true. Like, it's so different. But from my perspective, like, there are these really talented folks that typically have to work together. And so I'm like, great, this camp of people, like, get this thing done. But so when we designed the app, the colors we picked, I didn't think it would be so groundbreaking or like attention catching for people. But when we were picking the colors, we have a couple dark colors in our spread, in our brand book. And I was like, do the whole app on dark mode. And when I was asked why, I was like, well, if I'm thinking about when a lot of parents are going to be booking this, it's probably when they're laying in bed at night, or they are rocking their own kid to sleep. And when my phone is on like the whitest, brightest background possible, it's really bright and disruptive in the room. It just hurts my eyes. I turn down my brightness at night, all this stuff. But if the app's on dark mode, it is a more pleasant experience for someone. And hopefully it will not disrupt them or wake up their baby because it's super bright. And so they're like, okay, great. Like we'll do all of the app design with dark mode in mind. And then I started telling people that, and they're like, that is so intentional. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's just a mom thing. It's just like, just as a parent, I'm like, I would really love if this app didn't blind me.
Yeah.
But
I was like, listen to you being a user experience designer over there. Like,
well, and that's a huge part of it. Like, there's all these elevated terms for things, as there should be, right? And the more mature and hopefully the more growth we experience, the more we'll need those people that have like a really deep understanding of all of this. But right now, and for anyone who's like just starting out and building something and it has a technology component, if you are not your own customer, then find them and listen to them. It's in the casual conversations. It's in the coffee meeting you have with a couple of moms who bought your product, and 30 minutes in, one of them starts talking about something that drives her insane, and every other mom agrees. And you're like, oh, wow, that's great information. So, trust yourself, trust your gut. A lot of times, I mean, 0 to 1, maybe even 1 to 2 is a lot of gut, I think. Mm-hmm. And so if you're building something, be confident in yourself. If you're not your own customer, dear Lord, please find them and talk to them and spend so much time for them. And if you don't like the person you're building for, this is just my free advice, then like you're building the wrong thing.
Walk away.
Yeah,
you need to go.
Because if you don't like them now, when you've sacrificed and you've like a year down the line, you're gonna like them even less. So
yeah,
I think it's such good advice, Cori. I mean, I find a lot of comfort in. I'm really heavy on the research and discovery side. Before I do anything, I put a lot of focus on that, because for all the reasons that you just said, I'm sure a lot of other people do as well. But I find a lot of comfort in that all you got to do is talk to them. They're going to tell you what they need. You don't have to. And then there is a lot of gut, to your point. There is a lot of gut. There's a lot of intuition, but just listen to them. They're going to tell you what they need. And then you don't have to be this genius inventor. Just talk to your customers.
You know what people love talking about? Themselves and their problems.
Yes.
And if you can get them to talk about themselves and their problems, they're going to talk to you till they're blue in the face. So
yeah. And it's just so true. I mean, keep in mind, like, Moxi is small. We have limited resources. And I remember when I raised our friends and family around, people were like, that's so much money. I was like, oh, that's like gone. Like, that money is spoken for.
I spent that last month.
Yeah. Thankfully, I didn't spend it the month before, but I was like, that money is so spoken for. So y'all are, there's so many ways in which you can build something. But in the beginning, when your resources are limited and you can only afford just enough time from a professional like you two, it's like, know what you want from them. Like, go in and be like, I have talked to every person I know who wants this product or has this problem, and here's what they think, and here's what I think, and this is why I think it.
Prove
What
me
do
wrong.
you think?
Yeah.
Like, here it is. Build this and tell me if it's a bad idea, and like be just really focused, because I mean, that for us, like, we can only afford so much expert time. And so when we go into those expert moments, I'm like, here is just everything. And like, tell me if it's good or bad. And then we can talk about it and then go build. Like, that's it. So,
and we can't be afraid of the negative. The negative is what's going to save us money, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to like, be as honest and transparent to me as possible, because that's going to save me development time. It's going to save me heartache, all of the things. And then I'm going to do the ever infamous pivot, and I'll move on to another feature. So yeah. So, well, Cori, I for one am so thankful that you've been on the show. Like, I know people are going to get some invaluable information from this. There's a lot of talk about founding. There's a lot of talk about creating the startups, but there's a lot of real things and sacrifices and things that go along with it, but so much positivity. And again, I love that you just saw this problem and you're like, I'm solving it. And I became an employee. So who's doing it?
I myself am inspired. I'm selling my house. I'm starting.
I'm selling my house today.
It's listed. I listed it.
Is it on Zillow already?
Your children in closets, like, just their beds will fit. It's fine.
Claire has a showing at 3 today. All right. So
yeah, thank you so much, Cori, for joining us. We've been so pumped to talk to you, and we really appreciate what you're doing. And for listeners who have been listening today, go check out Moxi. It's moxichildcare.com, and take a look, check Cori out, and help support her in her journey. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Cori.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you'd like to connect with us, check out our website at bouncepodcast.com.